Thank you all for joining us for this Ace of Hearts film roundtable. I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Jocelyn Glenn. I am the curator of this exhibit at OutMuseum. And if you can all introduce yourself with your name, pronouns, the film that you're representing, and your location. I will start with Nguyen, the first person to pop into this call.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Nguyen. My pronouns are they, them, and I am the co-director and co-writer of Love Me.
We can go over to Heather.
Awesome. My name is Heather Nguyen. My pronouns are they, she. I am the co-director, writer, and actor of Ta, or lead actor of Ta. We have also awesome actors as well.
Hi, I'm Jaymee Mack, she, her, and I wrote, produced, and co-starred in It's Not You, It's Not Me.
Well, thank you all for joining me again. I want to get right into it. I want to ask each and every one of you. I mean, I know that there's hardly any ace representation at all in film and television. So I'm curious, what was the first ace character that you had seen? It doesn't have to be in film or television. It could be on social media. It could be an anime character. It could be a manga character, somebody from a book, anything. We could start with Yen.
There's probably a lot, but then I kind of forgot. They're not coming to me at the moment, but I think a historical figure would be like Queen Elizabeth, and like Great Britain long ago, and how she's known as like the Virgin Queen, and how she just refused to really like give birth to a heir, and she continued to just rule over the empire, even though obviously like as colonizers and all that. Aside from that, I think I respect her as like maintaining that title, being the Virgin Queen, and I think that was when it started making me like go on a discovery of my sexuality and all.
Anybody else can pop in.
I think the first asexual character that I saw was Todd Chavez from Bojack Horseman. Definitely not a character that I fully related with, but it was interesting to see, because that show also had like Vietnamese rep that was interesting, because it was a Vietnamese character not played by a Vietnamese person, Alison Brie, even though I loved her voice acting. But it was like, I think, I'm not sure which one happened first, but it definitely was a show that I kind of like loved for the psychological, like diving into mental health element of it. But in terms of representation, definitely took it with a grain of salt. So also with Todd Chavez being a very white passing character as well, it was interesting to see the different intersectionality and how they explored it, and at what points were they like, this is an interesting plot element, or they were like, this is actually really important for people to be seen. So very ambivalent about that.
Todd Chavez in Bojack was also the first time that I consciously recognized an asexual character in media as well.
And he is for a lot of folks too, because he's outwardly ace. They navigate that, or he navigates that storyline, wherein there are ace-coded characters in media, in forms of media, like Sherlock Holmes can be coded as ace, but it's never outright like Todd Chavez, and while he's a cartoon, he is a human, whereas most of the other characters in Bojack Horseman are not. And I think that's what makes him so tangible when he goes to the support group and he recognizes other ace characters, Yolanda and several others, as opposed to some other ace characters in media, like there's Varys, who's not even full human, from Game of Thrones. There's Rafael Santiago from Shadowhunters, who's a vampire, so not a human, like actual ace people. So yeah, he was a huge reference point, at least when it came to doing research for this exhibit. And Heather, you really mentioned something specific, right? Which is the racial component to aceness. This community is very dominated by white ace folks, and while they're, they are ace themselves, right? Kind of pushing a more intersectional narrative is so important. Do you feel that it was essential to do that for your own film?
Yeah, definitely. I know for Ta specifically, it was interesting because I was navigating as like usually navigating the world as like a cute femme, like Asian girl, and like different narratives that were sexual based that were put on me by like other folks. And by me existing as like a cute femme Asian, me being asexual was often called into question because that type of identity is often over sexualized. So it was important to me to create a character that entered into these like romantic or sexual situations and was like, okay, I am still ace, even though people may think otherwise just based off the way I look and act. So I think that is just my first film and kind of delving into that type of like intersectional experience, also with like learning more about colonialism and how like as a Vietnamese-American person, a lot of aspects of my identity and body and mind are like assumed to be owned by other people. So yeah, trying to explore that in a way that's tangible and healing for folks too, and not like further traumatizing. So it's a wild ride, but yeah.
Your film, Todd, definitely feels very autobiographical. And we do get to see that you portray Ta very compassionately, right? Without shame. That Ta can be a very colorful person, very, we do get to see the element of glitter, and they can dress however they want and not be shamed, right? When there is this fetishization of Asian women as well, especially in interracial contexts, where there's the expectation that they are submissive and whatnot. So, but like I said, because this is very much based on your own experiences, right? You do get to see Ta blossom into their identity from seeing you as a very young child, right? And you say that your family is that described you as a very joyful child, and into a very sexually abusive, violating relationship. In the conversations that your character has with her friend, that feels very open-hearted and non-judgmental, and then by the very end coming to a place where they are seeking a relationship that values intimacy in various forms, especially intimacy other than sex. So I really do appreciate that. And very similarly, I mean, there are sexual elements in your film, right? But the same for It's Not You, It's Not Me. So I want to ask you, Jaymee and Heather, did you two have an intimacy coordinator present on set that was there to choreograph these scenes?
Yeah, this was kind of I made this film maybe 7 years ago, before we learned about the incredible post of intimacy coordinator. And at the time I was still fairly green in acting, let alone, this was kind of the first film that I'd made. And so my co-star Lee Shorten actually was the one who kind of walked me through things, made me feel okay. We did an initial blocking with just me, him, and the director. And that was the scene that I was most nervous about filming on the day, but because we had pre-rehearsed everything, it was the smoothest. And we just followed simple protocols like making sure anybody who didn't need to be in the room wasn't there. Got all the requisite pasties, learned all about that. And yeah, just tried to cultivate a safe environment for us to all be in. But I would 1000% have an intimacy coordinator if I was to make that film today.
Similar to Jaymee, we did have like a closed set for the scenes. It was definitely made very clear for all the cast and crew about like what the scenes were, and so that they were aware and could leave the set. And then we definitely had an intimacy coordinator, Liz. And it was just really important for us, especially for a story in which consent was ignored, to not perpetuate that with our own, with the filming of those scenes. So I remember we had like Liz provide these like barriers for the actors, for Leo and Dylan. And I think one of them was like, no, I don't need it. And then on the day of, Liz checked in with them, but actually I would love to have it. And it was like really cool to, like, that wasn't something that was considered like an interruption or anything. Everyone just kind of went with the flow and allowed the actor to decide what was comfortable for them at that time. So yes, definitely recommend for future films as well.
Great, and we can definitely get into that later in this discussion. Yen, your film takes a different approach. You know, there's your character is a compelling character, and they don't have to engage in a gratuitous sex scene to kind of prove or disprove their aceness. I see a lot of movies and they have they push a romantic storyline that doesn't feel necessary. And I think it's great to see your character defend your aceness without succumbing to pressure and whatnot. Was this an intentional element that you threw in when in writing and directing it?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I think about like Hutter's and Jaymee's films, and I just can't help but be admirable of how brave it is for you all to put in like intimacy, especially when it's moments of questioning and the characters not being sure of their sexuality. Jaymee, I was watching your film earlier this morning, and just when it was like reaching that intimate scene, my mom, she almost walked in, and I had to like scroll down and be like, yeah, mom, I'm doing great.
Similarly, I was watching yours, I think on the train or in the airport, and I was like, oh, okay, no, food court at the airport. And I was like tilting my screen away from the group of people next to me.
So I think for me, like when I don't know if I could ever do that as an actor, so I really applaud for both of you. And two, like I mean, Jocelyn, I feel like you already made the point in your question is that I didn't feel like there was a need to have sex like in the scene, and then to have the character be like, no, this isn't for me. Like I think as people in the community, like whether they want to have sex or not with their partners, I feel like it's all up to every individual. And you know, even just having Tiffany, the roommate, say the word sex is already kind of dysphoric to Tan, the character. And although I purposely, you know, have it be comedic and, you know, funny, it's still just that repulsiveness, right? And I know there are certain asexual people who don't feel repulsed, and there are people who do. And so it's just kind of like showing that reaction that, you know, everyone has their own uniqueness when it comes to their sexuality and being on the ace spectrum.
I really appreciate you saying that. I did also want to note that I've talked about you to my best friend a ton. And my best friend, she's also Vietnamese, and she is possibly Asian. She's still navigating her identity. So my best friend says that she feels represented by your Untamed poster in the background. So I just want to toss that in. She was really excited. That was the thing she most sought after when watching the movie. But I do want to
I'm glad I put it in there then.
And I have the same Sailor Moon poster that you have right behind you.
Nice. Yeah, I had this for a while. Just for your context, Heather and Jaymee, like for my set, because we had like a limited budget, and so obviously my posters are from my own room that we use for production. And so I just grabbed whatever bunch I could, because you know the character Tiffany is into K-pop, like K-beauty, Asian drama, all this stuff, and I didn't have as much of those, and so I grabbed as much as I can. Anime, I got it, like no worries, we're saving money on production budget, set design, right? And so I just gave it all to my set designer and have at it, have fun with it, do whatever.
That you make a great point too, that you know, K-dramas and anime, they really have this they also have these very like romantic storylines And so Tiffany and Ten, they're very diametrically opposed characters in a way. And I did notice the minimalist approach to this film as well, but the emotional weight of the understanding that these two characters reach by the end of the film kind of drops like an anchor. It really reaches audiences. I know the author and journalist Angela Chen, she wrote the book Ace, I have it right next to me, What Asexuality Reveals About Desire, Society, and the Meaning of Sex, which I used as a research approach to this exhibit. She describes amatonormativity, which we see greatly displayed in your film. And she says that with it, there's an erasure of variation. The erasure of variation means the erasure of choice and the triumph of stereotype and stigma. And so Tiffany is definitely pushing Ten to be in a relationship because that's seen, you know, to not be in a relationship is to be invalid or something. So I have a question to each and every one of you. In going to festivals, what are some of the conversations that you've had with perhaps well-meaning folks who've seen your film and they ask you questions that are possibly based on stereotypes and biases? And do their responses urge you to keep making movies with ACE folks?
Yeah, I submitted to a bunch of festivals, but we didn't get into any of them. And it's been interesting because it's in a different way, I think the best film that I've made thus far in terms of the impact that it's had on folks. I think because there is so little representation out there, when something like half decent comes out, people are just so hungry to see themselves represented and have that catharsis. So some questions that I've had from people who watched it or that I've chatted to, I guess the common one would be, oh, is that like, what is asexuality? Does that mean that like you just have a low libido? No, the libido is different from attraction. Oh, what is attraction? And then they start kind of thinking about the role that libido and attraction plays in their own life. That's definitely one question. And then the other one is, oh, like, do they just like hate sex and never want sex? And then you explain that sexuality is on a spectrum, and some people do and don't. And kind of like what you were talking about earlier, Yen, like it's so awesome that you've curated this collection, Jocelyn, just to be able to see like 7 very different stories really drives home the point that the experience is different for everyone.
I don't remember many people who came up to me kind of perpetuating those types of questions. Either that or they did and I like blocked it out of my brain because it's kind of like, Jaymee, every question that you just voiced I've heard, so I was like, oh, I don't remember the circumstance anymore. But it was really cool that the majority of people who did come up to us, especially at like Outfest, were folks of color who oftentimes AFAB folks and non-binary folks who were like, hey, this, like, I lived this experience and didn't have the language, like this type of very vibrant metaphor language to explain those experiences. And some of them were like really like having the words and equipped with them for like future. And then like when we did our Seed and Spark campaign, folks either found out that they were ace through watching our film or had conversations about their parents who also realized that they're ace through that too. So I think those are the types of combos I really latch onto. I know there was like an awkward combo I had with someone who was like kind of like drew a little excitement about the fact about the person being ace in a way that was very kind of definitely fetishizing. So that's a negative one that stood out. But majority of time it was cool to see people be like, hey, this is, oh, another interesting situation that happens for folks who are not ace among close friends is that they think the film is very funny. I don't know what about it is funny, but I remember at one screening, I think it was Outfest, the first in-person screening we had was terrifying because I was like real-time responses, and like half of the audience laughed during the dishes scene, and I was like, oh, I don't know how I feel about that, but it's something that's kind of, it's interesting to see it resonates. Some folks feel empowered and some folks think it's a funny circumstance until the more traumatic things are happening. But yeah.
For me, I think to end it on a positive note, like when we first had the shorts be featured like in private screen. So this was when we haven't really had our world premiere or anything. And Heather, you were there. It was after the screening, and then we had like a mix and mingle afterwards, and it was having someone come up to me and say that they're demisexual and they relate to this, and so it was just having that joy of like, for me, proving to myself that I'm not alone and that my stories are resonating with other people, and it's just proving that like we need more stories like this.
Yeah, definitely. Go ahead, Jaymee. Thank you so much for sharing, everyone.
Yeah, I guess kind of tracking back to Heather's point about like the other different and more positive conversations. Yeah, having those comments saying, oh, I realized I was asexual after watching your film. But I also, because the film is about a mixed relationship, get a lot of comments from both ace and allo folks asking like, hey, me or my partner just discovered we're asexual. We've been married for a decade. What do we do? What resources are out there? And it's not a position that I thought I would be in after making this small film, to be guiding people in the direction. I'm not a trained therapist or anything, so I directed them to Avon. I directed them to any community groups on social networks, and I find those are the best for just being able to ask other people in real time for advice. Because yeah, it's like when you discover something like that, like where do you go? And that's usually where people want help.
That's a good point. I feel that a lot of these well-meaning questions, or a lot of these concerns or biases people have, could be prevented if we just had this comprehensive and inclusive sexual education earlier on, and for it not to be controversial when everybody is engaging in some way romantic and or sexual behaviors. And romantic doesn't have to be necessarily desire or attraction. Sexual doesn't have to mean the act of having sex, but in the sense of, there is a partner and we are in an intimate relationship, and intimate relationships can look like we have sex or we do not have sex, and how to navigate that. When we have, it seems that doing my research, a lot of the conversations about asexuality, really, it's also a conversation about sex, and which is the conversation that everybody wants to have. And so, and also in doing my research, it seems that there are likely a lot more folks out there who are ace, or who are aromantic, and they just don't know it because of this lack of understanding of what intimate relationships can look like, the diversity within relationships and relationship dynamics, and because of the lack of representation in media. So I'm sure there's more than 1% of people out there who are asexual. And so this exhibit definitely gives visibility and a resource to folks out there to, whether they're, in this community, in the spectrum of this community or not, acknowledge this community in some way. So it seems like we can be reaching a close within the next 10 minutes or so, but I do want to extend a question to all of you again. What's next for you? Do you have any projects with ace characters in mind? Will these ace characters just be characters? And will we be navigating platonic relationships as normalized? But what's next?
I have a couple. Oh, sorry. I have a couple of films that are almost done. One of them is one character is Ace, the other character is Demi. Best friends. It's a witchy comedy of two queer best friends just kind of navigating bullies. And it does have an element of them kind of stating their identity. But then my second film, it's a sci-fi film that doesn't necessarily state their specific identities, but it explores kind of the sense of like what is considered when, like, because queerness is oftentimes depicted within a community rooted definition. So it's exploring like what it's like to like, are you still queer when you're in isolation or when you are in an empty space? And that one definitely, I think, just because of our identities as actors, we bring that to our characters. But I would love to, for future projects, like, my dream is like a film or a TV show where the characters are all like on the ace spectrum, and they have like intimate, close emotional relationships, but don't necessarily have like sexual relationships, and they just kind of navigate the world, whether it be sci-fi or something, because I tend to like those genres. Because I had to make for myself my own healing, but I don't want to make any more films, even though they are valid, any more films with these characters in sexual situations. So that's where I'm going.
Yeah, I think for myself, being allosexual, I think my next project is doesn't have any asexual characters, but that's because it's a two-piecer, and the main topic is body dysmorphia. It's about a woman who discovers she can pull fat from her body, but it comes alive. Oh no. But yeah, I think it's something where I would want to have an ace person in the room crafting the story with me, kind of like I did with It's Not You, It's Not Me. I had a friend who's a ace advocate workshop the script with me, because I think it's really important that I don't tell stories on another community's behalf. So yeah, I'd be looking to do that for TV series and other things like that.
I think for me, I'm just continue writing, see what pops up in my mind. I would love to I've been having this idea where there's like this female assassin who's like asexual, and basically there's this kind of like joke within the ace community how like being immune to like attraction or feelings is like a superpower. And so I always kind of imagine like this female assassin who goes undercover in like a brothel or something and like can't be really seduced or whatnot because she's immune. So kind of playing with that idea.
Well, these all sound like great ideas. And just the fact that I'm hearing some different genres being thrown into the mix as well definitely sounds exciting. Perhaps perhaps this exhibit can be a two-parter as well, and we can extend it. But yeah, it's been a thrill talking to each and every one of you. I'm going to give you the rest of the time back. So, I mean, the more time I give you, the more time that you have to develop these ideas for us to see, and for me to watch voraciously, while muting the volume if anything gratuitous does come up. Well, thank you all for joining me. And do you have any last words for anybody?
Just that I'm really happy about how the clothes ended up being.
And I wanted to thank Jocelyn for creating this exhibit. I know you advocated for Tab before when we were in Outfest Fusion, Outfest. So really grateful for you continuing to uplift and advocate for these types of stories. Yeah, so thank you so much for creating this space for us.
Thank you.
Definitely echoing what Heather said. Thank you, Jocelyn. Like, I think I posted on Instagram, like, it's kind of was like a dream to really see a collection of ace shorts from different narratives and filmmakers.
Where can everybody follow you?
Well, since I'm already unmuted, my Instagram is at yen.money.din.
My Instagram is my name, so Heather Muriel Nguyen, no spaces. And then on Twitter, I'm sparkle_THO.
Yeah, on Twitter and Instagram, I'm at Jaymee Mac. And then the film It's Not You, It's Not Me has its own pages on Facebook and Instagram.
Great. Fortunately, I think I'm following each and every one of you. So I'll be following your careers moving forward, and I hope everybody does. Thank you for watching this roundtable, and thank you to our panelists who are able to join us. I hope that you enjoy the rest of the exhibit, and definitely watch these films, pass them on as a resource to folks. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.